Hi, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk People Pleasing. So, I want to talk about something that I'm seeing more and more in my practice recently, and it really just impacts so many people. And that is related to the connection between ADHD, trauma, and people pleasing. And if people pleasing for you feels like this absolute automatic response, it might go under your radar. It might not be until after you've been people pleasing that you realise what you've been doing. And it just feels like a habit that you can't seem to shake. Please know that you're not alone. A lot of people I work with feel stuck in this cycle of just constantly doing stuff for other people, despite feeling frazzled themselves and just struggling to say no to people. And when you add ADHD into the mix, especially when it's undiagnosed or misunderstood, it just can become that much harder to break free on your own from people pleasing tendencies. And today I want to talk a bit more about that, really, about how ADHD, trauma, and people pleasing can be so deeply interconnected that it does become difficult to make sense of it all and to work through it. And I'll talk a bit about some steps that you can take to help you start feeling a bit more able to live more authentically and to feel a bit more comfortable in your own skin. And a key thing with all of this to bear in mind is even if it feels difficult to pinpoint exactly which element, i.e., ADHD, trauma, or people pleasing, which element is driving your struggles, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't start looking at how you might be able to address the issues that are holding you back and the struggles that you're having. Now, when most people think about ADHD, unless they've been researching it or they've been looking at social media stuff about it recently, they do tend to still think of it in terms of someone having difficulty concentrating or struggling to sit still or becoming easily distracted. And what often gets overlooked is actually how ADHD can really affect your ability to regulate your emotions, and that you can have an increased sensitivity to rejection and almost like this superpower in a sense of becoming really aware of what everyone else is thinking and feeling. And if you have ADHD, you might find yourself more sensitive to criticism than others. And that can lead in itself to this strong need to avoid disappointing people or letting people down. And within that, one recurring theme that I hear about and see is this feeling of being too much. And that's where the people pleasing often comes into play. And in my work, I see this a lot. I see it a lot. And many people, especially the women I work with, have struggled with ADHD for years or even decades, often without realizing it. And sometimes, just going through life, most of their lives undiagnosed. And within that, one recurring theme that I hear about and see is this feeling of being too much, too talkative, too emotional, too disorganized, too impulsive, just too much. And when you've spent your life feeling like you're somehow too much, it completely makes sense, doesn't it, that you're going to develop certain coping mechanisms so that you cannot be too much, And that can often be people pleasing. It's a way to feel and be accepted by other people, maybe a way to make sure that you don't overwhelm others, or you don't disappoint people around you, and it keeps you safe, feeling like if I can please them, I won't be mocked or criticised or rejected. So imagine if you're like at a family event, perhaps the conversation's becoming more lively and you're excited about something you're talking about, and you might start talking more passionately about it. And then someone cuts you off with, all right, calm down, you're getting a bit giddy, aren't you? You're getting a bit carried away. And instantly you might feel that familiar sense of embarrassment or shame, like, oh, I'm being too much again. I'm so stupid, whatever you might say. So next time, it makes sense that you then perhaps hold back, you stay quieter, you might laugh and nod along to stuff. But even when you have something to contribute, you might keep your mouth shut. And you find yourself working really hard to hold yourself back and keep other people happy and try not to overwhelm anyone with your passion. And that in itself is people pleasing. You're diminishing your own presence to avoid criticism or rejection, understandably, because of those experiences you've had. But over time, that behavior makes you feel like you've got a mask or shapeshift all the time, and you just end up feeling like you're living a life that isn't really your own, like you don't belong, or you're not being yourself, but you start to lose who you really are because you feel like you can't be yourself. So, if we talk about trauma, you may have spent years feeling like you don't quite belong or fit in, like you're different somehow. Like the world expects you to be different from who you are to fit in with it. And that's a trauma in itself that people don't realize. For many people with ADHD, there's this history of being misunderstood or negatively judged or rejected, perhaps difficulty maintaining relationships or friendships with people at times. And that leads to what we call the fawn response, which is a way of coping by appeasement, basically. It's trying to keep other people happy, please other people, maybe win them over to avoid conflict or avoid rejection and to keep us feeling safer. And if you've experienced trauma, particularly the trauma of being criticised for your ADHD traits, it's understandable if you can relate to that and you start perhaps fawning or people pleasing, as it's known as, because you want to avoid feeling that horrible crap feeling again. It's quite an ingenious survival tactic, really, when you're feeling uncomfortable or you don't feel safe around people, because it does help you get people on side and win them over because you're adapting yourself to fit in with them, to please them. And underneath that, it's this sense of if I can just keep everyone happy with me and liking me, then no one will criticize me, no one will call me out on anything or mock me, and everything will be okay, and I'll feel okay and they'll feel okay. So it's easy to understand why we do it. And, think about social situations when you do mask yourself, or at least when you shapeshift who you are and adapt your true self to blend in with people. And just think back to those times and what it is you were feeling that sort of drove you to do that. And also, you might recall, or you might find, and this is something I could definitely relate to, that you have a tendency to smile and nod along to things in social situations, even if they don't sit right with you, or even if people aren't on the same wavelength, or your values aren't aligned with people. And as I say, I would do this even if things like didn't quite sit right with me or didn't really resonate with me. I wouldn't let on with that. I'd mask it and I'd just try and join in. And another side of adapting who you are for the sake of everyone else is you might find that you work really hard to appear more focused and organized or calm than you really feel inside your head. In your mind, there might be all sorts of thoughts, ding, 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 all sorts of things, ideas that you are carrying, and you feel scattered in your head. But to the outside world, or to the people maybe you work with, or the people you're around, they wouldn't know that because you are so good at masking it. And because you're so good at it and being in tune with what other people are thinking and feeling, and sort of monitoring them and being hyper vigilant of everyone else's moods and reactions, you might find you often tone down your natural enthusiasm for stuff because there's that thing lingering in the background, or not, at the forefront maybe, of someone telling you maybe multiple times that you were too much. And over time, that masking that you're doing, it just becomes so exhausting and draining, and it's not sustainable because ultimately you're living a life that doesn't truly belong to you, and you start feeling that. It might be subtle or it might be obvious, but the feeling will be there regardless, that you're constantly preoccupied with other people, putting other people first, and it just drains you. You're just using so much of your energy in social situations that no wonder you probably feel knackered afterwards and like you've got to have a whole day or more to recharge your battery before you do that again. And the ultimate side effect of all this, as I've touched on, is it distances you from your true self, from your true identity, which is horrible. It's a horrible place to be. You might feel quite lost or stuck with it. And for many people with ADHD, being told you're too much starts really early in life. So you might have been told by teachers or parents or friends in school, you're too talkative, quiet down, you're too impulsive, oh, you're naughty, you're too disorganised, or you're too sensitive. And over time, those messages that we take in and that we receive growing up, even if they're not explicit, I mean, they might be implicit, they still are there and they stick, and you start to believe that you're not acceptable as you are. So then you do begin to shrink yourself and you hide those parts as best you can, and you fall deeper into that pattern of people pleasing, and it manifests in different ways then and shows up in different areas of your life, with the hope that, consciously or not, that if I act like this, if I do this, if I help them, if I put myself out for them, then I'll finally be accepted and feel like I fit in and I belong. And one of the most powerful ways, in my opinion, to break free from these cycles that I'm talking about is really uncovering and exploring and addressing the past stuff that's influencing how you feel in the here and now, and to process those past experiences that have made you feel like you're not good enough or you're too much. Because it is trauma, it's traumatic, and trauma isn't always like this single catastrophic event that you might associate it with. It can be these subtle, repeated moments of rejection or criticism that shape how you see yourself and how you respond to other people. And it's remembering that trauma isn't just the presence of these negative messages and this negative stuff, it's also the absence of the good stuff that is traumatic as well. And within a cluster of perhaps ADHD, trauma, people pleasing, it's not always necessary to pinpoint exactly whether it's the ADHD or the trauma or the people pleasing that you need to focus on before you can start to take action to process things, because usually it's a combination of those elements working together anyway. And through trauma-focused therapy work, and firstly, if you don't identify your experiences as trauma-informed therapy can still be really helpful, because it's looking at what's happened in the past that you've gone through that's made you feel like you're not safe to be who you really are in the present. And there's specific therapy interventions that you can take part in sessions that you can do in a manageable way, a paced way for you, that will help you process the past stuff that you've been through and how that's affected you. And even if you haven't got clear memories of being labelled too much or being criticised or mocked or whatever it is, you might not remember stuff cognitively up here, but your body will remember stuff. Think of it as your body holds implicit memories. So you might not be consciously aware of what it's remembering, but there's certain things in therapy that can help you resolve all that regardless. And what matters as well is recognizing these patterns and addressing what's standing in the way of you feeling good enough just as you are right now. Which leads me on to, how do you start to break free from people pleasing then in the present? And as always, the first step is increasing your awareness by recognizing where these patterns are showing up in your life. Notice where you're shape-shifting and masking. Noticing where you're saying yes when you want to say no. Notice who it's with. Who is it that's perhaps making you feel uncomfortable? What contexts, what situations, environments and scenarios? Who are you trying to keep happy? And really start asking yourself what it is about the person or the situation that's making you engage in these people-pleasing habits, that are making you say yes when you want to say no. What's the why behind it? And a helpful tip as well is to notice how your body's responding as well. Because how we feel physically can give us so many clues as to what's actually going on for us. Because as I say, memories are stored in the body and we might not even consciously know what your body's remembering. So a helpful tip, as I say, is not just noticing your thoughts, but observe your body's reaction as well. Like if you smile but you're feeling shaky inside, are you overcompensating in certain situations? How you're behaving or coming across doesn't match what's going on in here. Awareness is key, because noticing those habits and when they're occurring and what your triggers are means that you'll be so better placed to start breaking them and creating new habits. So imagine you're at work, your manager asks you to take on some extra tasks. Again, probably because if you're a people pleaser, you will already have extra tasks on your plate, I imagine. And despite being frazzled, at full capacity, overwhelmed, you can't make sense of what you're doing, you're juggling everything, you find yourself saying yes even though you want to say no. You know you're already feeling it, you're already stretched, but you say yes, no problem. And practice noticing situations like that where it shows up for you. And when those situations occur, when you can, just try and stop and ask yourself, what's stopping me from being honest right now? And then what you can start doing, you can start trying to implement a little bit of a pause before you respond. So even if you know you're going to end up saying yes, just practice putting a pause in place, like slowing down your responses and pausing. Because these habits are so ingrained within us, delaying that automatic yes is a powerful tool to shift how you're going to respond. And then, if you feel able to, that means you can start implementing boundaries or responding differently, because you're better able to notice when the yes is about to come out, pause before you respond. And then, as I say, if you feel able to, you could say something to your manager like, I've already got a lot on my plate at the moment. Can we revisit this later? Or, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. What would you like me to delegate to make space and time for this? And it can feel daunting at first. And I'm really aware when I start talking about, like, just say this or just set boundaries, just say no. If you've not worked through the past stuff and the root causes, I know from my own experiences and the people I work with, it can feel so daunting to feel like you're about to confront someone. This fear of confrontation might kick in. And even if you know rationally it's okay to say no and it's okay to set boundaries, if your body reacts as if it isn't okay to say it, then that's a sign that there's perhaps stuff a bit deeper down that needs addressing to help you be better able to make changes in the here and now and for that to feel more manageable. And remember as well, you don't have to start making massive changes. It doesn't have to be all or nothing with this. And you might be familiar with an all or nothing way of thinking or doing, but we're looking for the middle ground here, and that's what we're aiming for. So you don't have to start making massive changes and saying no to everything, and you don't have to be aggressive with it to get people to back down or back away. You can still be who you are deep down. You are still able to retain those positive qualities that makes you the empathetic, considerate, kind person you are, and start making space and time for you and what you need and want. And in the example of your manager and being at work or something, if it feels too daunting to think about setting a boundary, and maybe there's something about your manager that makes you feel more uncomfortable than with other people. A lot of people I work with, it's not uncommon for actually people in authority to make them feel more uncomfortable than others. And it sounds obvious when you say it, but unless you start really observing where your people pleasing is happening and stuff like that, that might have gone under your radar. So if that's the case and it does feel too daunting, you could start setting smaller boundaries with people that you feel more comfortable with, and use that then to build your confidence over time. And just remember, there's no rush with any of this, and there's no shame in struggling with it, because remember, it's not necessarily the situation in the here and now that's the issue and that's causing you these feelings. There could be that, but usually it's either the past stuff coming through, the messages you've received from like authority figures in the past, etc., that your body's remembering and influencing then how you view and how you feel about the situation in the present. Or it could be a combination. And this is why I'm so passionate about dealing with the root causes and the past stuff, like, the roots of the past, as well as teaching you like strategies, practical things you can do in the here and now to help you manage your difficulties in your daily life as well. So my approach is very much about exploring and addressing the past to really delve deep and, get the roots out and deal with that. And doing stuff about how things are showing up in the present for you as well. Because I've been there, and I've witnessed for myself and experienced for myself how liberating it feels to just break free from all that anxiety and worry, feeling like you're not good enough, and that fear of speaking up and saying no to people. And the passion I have for it just comes from that, spreading the word and wanting other people to feel that liberating feeling, I suppose. It is possible for changes to happen, even if you've spent decades, as I had, feeling the way you feel. It is possible for change to happen. so that you can feel that you are good enough and you're not too much. And that's why, like I say, my approach deals with that, and I'm qualified in the approaches that are necessary to help people address the past stuff and to manage those difficulties in the here and now. And we can do that in a really manageable way and paced way that fits for you. And there's certain therapy techniques we use, and we tune into feelings associated with the past, and we revisit and process them in a specific way, an evidence based way. And by doing that, your brain's then much more able to recognize that the situation in the here and now is different to the situation in the past. So the feeling you have in the here and now when you're trying to confront someone or assert yourself or set a boundary, the feeling then isn't as intense as it was when you've processed the past stuff. And with that comes this shift within you of recognizing and feeling, I am enough just as I am. I'm not the problem. And that then gives you that power, if you like, to start advocating for yourself in it as well. And as I've said, you still can retain those positive qualities that make you the kind person you are whilst you're doing all of this. It doesn't have to be you either people please or you never do anything nice for people again. It can be both. Both can exist. You can retain those positive qualities that you have and start living life how you truly want to live it and remove that mask. And on that note, you can definitely see how passionate I am, can't you? But if any of this does resonate with you, whether it's the anxiety about saying no, or the pressure to fit in, or just trying to feel like you belong, or just being fed up, emotionally and socially drained from wearing a mask and pretending to be someone you're not, please just see if you can think or even consider how things could be different if you were able to start increasing your awareness and implementing changes for yourself. Like, it doesn't have to be me as a therapist, but obviously you can reach out to me and I would love to support you. But just someone who's experienced in all these things I'm talking about, because you deserve to be able to show up in the world just as you are without feeling like you're too much. And if you do want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at Charlotte_Bailey_therapies, or visit my website, charlottebaileytherapies.com. I always offer a free initial chat so we can talk about stuff and I can tell you a bit more about how I can help. And you can ask me any questions. And if you found this episode helpful, please do subscribe and like and share it to anyone else that you think might find it helpful as well. And as always, I'll happily take any requests of any content ideas if you have any. So do reach out and let me know. But thank you so much for listening or watching today, and I'll see you soon.